Hey, I'm Brad, and welcome back to Through the Decades, the podcast. My mum is a manager of Chinnery's Court in Braintree, Essex, which is a McCarthy Stone retirement living development. Throughout this series, I'll be interviewing some of the homeowners and getting an insight into their entire lives from their childhood through till now. Today, I'm joined by Jean, who is 90 years young. So, Jean, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and a little bit about your life.
Well, to start with, yes, 90 years young, that's
90
me.
years young.
I don't feel it at all, and I hope I don't look it either, but you know, I'm sort of, I'm living life to the full as much as I can at 90.
Yeah. So, do you have any kind of highlights within your life? What kind of things you look back on and go, that's definitely a highlight of my life for me?
I've always been a sports girl, playing sports, blah blah blah, and then particularly badminton, because that took my life over.
I love badminton as well.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do.
And that I got chosen to play for Essex County.
Wow.
That was a highlight, yes it was. I had achieved something in sports that I liked. That was my life. I used to play all sorts of sports, you know, but then I played badminton at the youth club. I belonged to a youth club, Hornchurch Youth Club, and they had this as one of the sports one evening, in the sports evening at the club. Yeah, I sort of took that up and got into it, and used to train every night. After work, I would come back. Mum would have a cup of tea ready. I would go out road running and train all around the streets in the dark by myself. I wanted it. This was something I did want, you know, because I knew there were lots of badminton clubs in Essex, and there's so many ladies in these clubs that would love to have been in my position.
Yeah. And you just got selected out of your entire team to represent Essex.
Well, I suppose maybe Essex were asking for clubs to put forward players of a certain standard to represent them in county matches. And that's how it started with me. My coach there must have put my name forward to be selected to attend a playing session for these would be up and coming stars that would play for Essex County in the future. So that was a very important part of my life at that particular stage. And I suppose, I don't know, at that stage I was about 17.
Wow. What do you remember about the place you grew up? How was life growing up?
Growing up was for me during the war.
Yeah.
So I grew up during the war.
How was that?
Well, I was too... Yeah, I've often thought about this, and it's too young. I was too young to understand what war meant.
And what was going on?
Yes,
yeah.
Although I can remember the very day it was announced on the radio. I can remember that day, and I can remember the look of horror as she looked at Dad.
This was your mum?
Yes. Yeah. That war had been declared.
Yeah.
And that was I've always remembered that particular moment in my life.
Yeah.
And although I didn't understand what war was, I know it was something not very nice by the reaction from my mum to my dad.
Yeah.
And so yes, that's I remember very much. And another one, of course, was when I did get chosen to play for Essex.
Yeah. So, how would you say the war affected your school life? How was your school life growing up?
Well, that was another thing. Our school was at the very end of a long lane going through Hornchurch. and at the end of the lane was a full stop, a road opposite, but there was an unmade road carrying on, unmade, blah, blah, and that led to Hornchurch Aerodrome. And of course, Battle of Britain was fought in the air. So, I don't think I had much schooling then, because, or if we did, of course it was interrupted by there was a lot of fighting going up in the skies, obviously. And at home, we had this air raid shelter down in the depths. And that was another thing. 6 o'clock every night, we could look at our watches, 6 o'clock, yes, air raid siren went. Everybody descended the bottom of the garden into these air raid shelters.
Yeah.
And I remember Dad digging a big hole in the garden at the time, wondering what on earth was going on. Is this? And I remember one night and Dad had to be in London because he was a Morse specialist, so he needed to read all sorts of messages coming in from Germany to give to the government, I suppose. I don't know, he gave them to. And what was your question?
My question was, how was your school life during the war?
Yes, well, that was interrupted, obviously.
Yeah.
We were next to this aerodrome, but one night we sort of all went down. Mum had a special case. It was full of provisions in case we couldn't get back into the house the next morning, so that we could have some breakfast, And this case went with us every night down into the shelter, so that there was some sort of food available for next morning, in case we'd been bombed out of our house. I know we were in line for the bottom of the road. We were at the top of the road, and at the top of the road there were 4 or 5 houses beyond us, and then a little alleyway, and a bomb had dropped in that garden, right in line with our shelter. That impressed me. It well impressed me that I thought, crikey, had that been a few yards down Lambourne Gardens, that would have been right on top of our shelter.
Yeah.
Things like that I remember. But school life was interrupted. Yes, it was interrupted, and we'd come back the next day, maybe going to the village. That's what we called Hornchurch at the time. It was a village, and everywhere there was shattered glass. Everywhere, every shop's windows had been blown in, and there was glass everywhere, on the pavements, on the roads, everywhere glass. I remember that particularly. These little things, I've remembered a lot.
Yeah.
Although war was a word, but what did it mean?
So when the war ended, how was life then? Because obviously life must have been so different during the war.
Oh yes.
To afterwards. How did life change?
Well, it didn't change. In fact, for a little while it was worse, because for about a year after, we couldn't get any food. There was no food available to be had, and we had to make the most of what our mums could muster up and cook and make a meal of something. But I do remember that there was a lack of food, and in fact one particular time, Christmas time, my sister and I, Mum said, quick, go down the village, go and queue up. The greengrocers has got some fruit in, and they had fruit that I'd never seen before. Like I didn't know how to eat a banana.
Wow.
Because we didn't know, we hadn't had fruit for such many years, 5-6 years, no fruit.
Because of the war?
Yeah.
Wow.
And when this banana, Mum said, get what you can, in the way of fruit, and get whatever you can, vegetables, whatever, because food was very short after the war. And times were even more difficult, really, sometimes after the war, especially with food.
Yeah.
Because at that time I was also very shy.
Really?
I was terribly shy. I wouldn't speak to anybody in case they spoke to me back, and I hadn't got the confidence or the courage to talk to them.
Yeah.
I was terribly shy.
Wow. That doesn't show today. Doesn't show.
No, I know that, and
You're a much more confident person now.
now, yes,
Yeah.
but it's taken me a lifetime to conquer that shyness and realise that I've got to talk to people and join in the conversations.
Yeah.
But that took me a long time.
So after the war, kind of life, you said life got a little bit worse, but then I'd say it would have got better eventually.
Yes.
What was your first job? How was your life?
My first job became my lifelong job.
And what was that?
But in different stages I progressed throughout and got to the top. But at first, my father, he was a very forward-looking man. Although I was sometimes scared of him, he was a forward-looking man. When I look back, and he thought, I should have some commercial training. So I went to Clark's College in Romford, which was a commercial college, to learn the basics, shorthand typing and bookkeeping and all the commercial subjects you were taught there for 2 years. And then I became, my first job, I was a sort of lowly little shorthand typist at 16, 17, I suppose. And gradually, learning different subjects, this sort of thing, I eventually became quite a, what can I say, high up lady in my office.
So what did your work involve? What did you have
Banking.
to do? Banking. Wow. What has been the biggest lesson that you've learned during your life? Because you've had experiences in war and outside of war. With that comes a lot of lessons.
Yes.
What big lessons have you learned during your life?
I suppose, really, to be open to people and to talk to people, hoping that they will talk to me back, and I shall feel, from where I started, this shy, terrible, tongue-tied little girl, to where I am, I will have achieved something in life, to have been able to talk openly, like I'm talking to you now.
Yeah, so it's just that confidence.
Yes.
That's what
Confidence,
that's
yes.
the biggest
that's
lesson.
Right. Yes, it is.
And if you could go back to any age or year, what would that be? And why is that?
Well, one of them would have been being chosen for Essex, of course. That was an achievement. For me, that was a big achievement, know. And another was I started a singing, of course.
That was going to be my next question.
I started a singing group. Didn't know what I was doing, of course, at that stage. Like I did here, started a singing group. So these little achievements have meant quite something to me, considering I started off tongue-tied and had no confidence whatsoever and was shy. and when I look back at all of that, and now sitting here talking to you, I'm perfectly happy to talk to you, and hopefully you get something from it.
I'm glad. So that you beat me to it. My next question was going to be, you obviously have a massive love for music and singing.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Where did that love and passion for music and singing come from?
I grew up in a family of musicians. Dad had a lovely, although he didn't sing a lot, when he did, he had a lovely deep bass voice, beautiful it was, but he didn't sing very often. And Mum sang, she also played the piano for all of us, blah blah blah. My sister was a teacher and she taught music. So I had all this music around me from a very young age, and I suppose it went in, did something inside me, and now I have this love for music. And long may it continue.
You mentioned that you set up a music singing group.
Mm.
How did that all come around?
Well, just by asking people, would you like to join a music group? That's what I'm trying to set up, blah, 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 and get people's reaction to that.
Yeah.
So...
How long did you do that for?
Oh... I'm still doing it actually now, because I'd like to reinstate it. People don't know this, and I do tell them every time I tell them. But music, singing has a particular chemical element to your brain which releases serotonin and dopamine, and they both are feel-good factors.
Yeah.
They bring out the happiness in people. And I tell this to people all the time, because singing is one of the best things elderly folk can do here.
Yeah.
I wish I could get through to people.
Well, hopefully you will through this podcast.
Yeah.
So, what was the best day of your life? This is a massive question, because there must be so many days in your life that you could say, definitely the best day of my life. But if you had to choose one day out of your entire life...
You see, this is difficult, because I suppose most people would say, or a lot of people would say, the day I got married.
Yeah.
I would hope they said that. But the best day of my life... Well, it was the day I got chosen to play for Essex.
Yeah, it does sound like that's a massive day in your life.
Yes.
Wow.
Because I knew there were hundreds of ladies in Essex who would love to have been able to take my place.
And you're the one that got chosen.
And I got chosen.
Yeah.
And so we played, as a county team, we played all different counties.
Mm.
So we used to travel quite a bit on a Sunday, that was.
And I'm going to presume that that's what you're most proud of?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Good. What was your big dream? What was the thing that you really wanted to achieve when you grew up?
Do you know, I don't think I ever thought of that. I can't think, sitting here, I can't think that I did achieve it or I didn't achieve it, because I never thought it.
So you never really had any goal?
Ambition?
No?
No, I suppose not. Well, it did. I had an ambition, but that was sports.
Sports. So sports was kind of what you wanted to do.
Yes.
And you managed to achieve that.
Yeah.
Okay, Jean. So people listening to the podcast won't know that you're in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
And you're 90 years young.
Yes.
But you're still living here in your wheelchair.
Yes.
Going around every day-to-day
yes.
life,
Mm-hmm.
independently.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what happened, why you are in a wheelchair?
Well, yes, it was a car accident, but it was the state of the road. I was coming back along off the A12, and I know, because it was the same in the morning, that the army manoeuvres had been on that road all day long. They were moving out into Suffolk area, blah blah blah, and so the state of the road was what caused the accident, and well, that's it. The car just sort of slid off the road. I was unable to control it, and sort of we landed up on a. Fortunately, there was no other traffic about at that particular time. It was purely the state of the road.
You chose to come to McCarthy Stone
Yes.
instead of, this is an independent living, like we mentioned a little bit later on in the podcast, but you could have gone to an assisted living or a care home.
Mm-hmm.
But like I mentioned, you're here in an independent living, 90 years young, going around day-to-day life in a wheelchair, and I think your story is really inspirational.
I suppose it's a question of what I wanted to do throughout my life. I did to the very best of my ability. If I didn't want really to do things, I wasn't interested in them, so I didn't pursue them.
Yeah.
Whatever I've pursued was because I wanted to do it. But I can only do things in everyday life. I can only do things if I can do them to the best of my ability. If not, I'm not interested in whatever it was.
Your life must be so different in a wheelchair compared to quite a few other people your age.
Yes.
How is life in a wheelchair?
Life in a wheelchair is very difficult. And it is because, well, as you can imagine, you have to do everything, and I say everything, in a wheelchair. So I can't sort of get up and start walking, and even little things, just go and turn the television on. Everything has to be done from me sitting in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And the same in the kitchen. To get food, drink, all that, But I've been doing it now for so long that I don't think about how difficult it is. I just do it because I've got to do it.
Yeah.
It's willpower over everything else.
Yeah. I mean, I think your story, like I say, is so remarkable, Jean, and just the way you're going by day to day in a wheelchair, but not letting that faze you. Do you know what I mean? I think it's remarkable.
Yes, and that's why I am so glad. For me, coming here was ideal.
So let's move to the present day now, Jean. You're living here at Chinnery's Court in McCarthy Stone Independent Living Development.
Yes.
How long have you been living here?
I've been living here 8.5 years.
Wow.
I came here the second day it opened.
So you're basically one of the first people
Yes.
that moved in.
Yes.
And you're still here.
And I'm still here.
Still here. What made you move to a McCarthy Stone development?
Well, I'd read about it. I was living in Shalford, little village.
That's on the outskirts
Yes.
of Braintree.
Very nice, very nice. Lovely pub there too. Well, when I say that, it was a very friendly pub. You could go in and people would talk to you straight away without knowing you. And it was a village pub. I read about it in the local paper that they were going to build this development. They hadn't even started then. But what it would mean, blah blah blah. And I thought, that's. And I kept in touch. They did various articles, and one day somebody came to see me, a lady. She came to see me, young lady, to talk to me about it. Obviously, an agent of McCarthy Stone. And so she continued to keep me updated on it all. And I thought, it sounds good. It's. I like the sound of it. I like the sound of what they hope to do and how they hope to turn it into a development for retired people, and sort of describing what activities could take place, all of that sort of thing. And that's how I first became interested in it. And then I forget what her name was, she came to visit me a lot to keep me updated, and it was she, in fact, that said to me, because I said I was interested, and she said, presumably you would like a ground floor flat. I said, oh yes, blah blah blah, and with a little bit of garden, which I've got. So, and because gardening, I that was one of my interests as well, gardening. When I was growing up at home with Dad, I just used to go out and watch him do his garden and learn from that sort of thing. So, I suppose there was nothing
stopping you from...
No.
So it must have then been built, the development must have been built, and then you just moved in.
Well, yes, but I did rely on forget what her name was. I relied on her to choose an appropriate and the best apartment for me. And I reckon, even now, she did. I think I'm the luckiest one. Out of all the lot back at here, I think I've got the best one of them. I've been in them all down there,
Yeah.
And I had a good friend at the end one, she's died now, but and so that's how it all came about. Just because this, I forget what the name
of this one
was.
article,
and she used to come and keep me updated on it.
Yeah.
She was ever so good, and I forget what her name was, but she was obviously an agent for McCarthy Stone.
Yeah. So this is an independent living development. So there's loads of social activities, coffee mornings, knit and natter, all of this in the lounge.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find this type of community living?
I find it very acceptable, and it's what I'd hoped it would be.
So it's lived up to your expectations?
Yes.
And would you recommend this type of community living, and this sort of development, independent living development as a whole?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, to the appropriate aged people. It's no good coming here in your 20s expecting...
That defeats the objective of a retirement living development. But you definitely recommend this type of community living?
Yes, I would. Yes. Good. Because, this is a small development, I know, compared
much
with
smaller than others. Yeah.
And that's partly why we all get on so well.
Because it's such a close community.
Yes. We help each other.
Like a little family.
Yes, and if somebody's ill and they want some shopping, somebody will go and get it for them, or somebody will do whatever they want done, and they can't do it, or they don't feel very well, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We will help each other. We all get on very well.
So I love that kind of family-like feeling about the development. That's nice. So I'm going to finish off this episode the way I finish off every single episode, and I'll ask you, what one piece of advice would you give to the younger generations?
Be kind.
That's nice. Be kind. 2 words that just sum up. I love that. Well, that is it. That's what we've got time for today. Thank you, Jean, for joining me and sharing your incredible life experiences with us.
You're welcome.
Make sure you join me next week with my first couple of the series, Veronica and Richard. They'll be here sharing their life stories through the decades. And of course, don't forget to share the podcast on Spotify or YouTube, and turn on the notifications to never miss an episode. Apart from that, I'll see you next week.